All right, good evening, everyone. It is 8:16, so we're going to go ahead and get started on our workshop tonight. Thank you very much for joining me for the workshop on what is a technical interview and how do I prepare for one. My name is Jeffrey Fouts. I am the Associate Director of Career Services here at the iSchool, and I'm also in charge of data analytics. And tonight we're going to be talking specifically about how to conquer the technical interview. So we're going to talk about what recruiters are looking for in technical interviews and how you can better prepare for those types of interviews as well. As we're going through the workshop tonight, if you do have any questions or comments, please feel comfortable to ask them or to say them, or you can wait for the end of the presentation and then we'll have some time for question and answer as well. To give you a little background on myself, I've been with the iSchool since 2014. I have 24 years of experience in the information technology field, both as an employee and as a hiring manager. I have my master's degree in information management from the iSchool, and talking to recruiters is something that I do on a regular basis. So I'm using all of that knowledge and information in this presentation and to share that information with you tonight. So having said that, let's go ahead and we'll work our way into the presentation. Technical interviews oftentimes present students with complex problems that test their problem-solving skills and critical thinking abilities. While not all technical interviews will use technical problems to assess a student's skills, they help students get a sense, or they help interviewers get a sense of how a student's capabilities will help them succeed in the role that they're interviewing for. So the technical interview is unlike any other job interview that you're going to go through. It's specialized, it's more rigorous, and it's going to test things like your coding skills, your problem-solving skills, and your thinking skills. But even though interviewing for a tech job can be intimidating, it's a lot easier when you know what to expect and have invested time into prepping for the tech interview. In this workshop, we're going to discuss what a technical interview is, why recruiters use technical interviews, and how to prepare for a technical interview. Okay. So technical interviews are typically conducted by employers who are hiring IT or other technical professionals. Technical interviews allow interviewers to assess candidates' technical skills, problem-solving skills, and critical thinking skills. So this is what they're looking for, and this is what they're testing. In a technical interview, it's not uncommon for interviewers to present things like brain teasers, numerical reasoning problems, or technical assessment problems that test a student's ability to create solutions and solve problems. Hiring managers may conduct technical interviews on the phone or through online face-to-face communication platforms. And of course, before COVID, most of the technical interviews would be in person. You can probably expect most likely that you're going to be getting a technical interview online. There's a lot of students who are being put through testing through third-party software to test their technical knowledge. So you need to be prepared for all of those things. There's also the possibility that you're going to be going through a video interview, and they're going to want you to share your screen, and then you're going to be coding on the screen as they're giving you situations or problems that they want you to code. So being prepared for those types of things is half the battle. Okay, so why are technical interviews conducted? A technical interview evaluates a student's abilities to think creatively, adapt solutions, and find ways to solve technical problems. Success in a technical interview signifies that a student's qualifications meet the job requirements. Because a technical interview assesses a candidate's approaches to solving problems, the interviewer may use a set of technical problems that the student is expected to solve during an interview. The interviewer can assess the way the student approaches the problem, breaks it down, and solves it. And that's the key there, how you are approaching it, breaking it down, and solving it. So the thing you want to remember is, while arriving at a correct answer can be beneficial, interviewers are typically looking for your methodology when solving problems. And oftentimes they'll place more emphasis on the methodology rather than finding a right answer. So they're trying to assess how you're thinking. They're trying to assess how you approach situations, how you approach a problem that they're going to be giving you. So, too many times students get caught up in the fact that they want to get a right answer, when really what you should be focusing on is how you come about trying to get to the right answer. And oftentimes it's that effort that you're putting in looking for the answer that's going to pay off in the long run. So I want you to stop thinking about right answers and think more about the process of getting to that answer that recruiters are looking for. Okay, so let's talk about the stages of a technical interview. And there's actually 3 stages that typically you'll go through when you're interviewing with a company for technical type roles. So the first stage is typically the technical phone or video screen. But good news, the company liked your resume and wants to talk to you more. So just getting to the first stage is a really big step. This is usually a short social and technical screening designed to see if you're qualified, and more importantly, if you are enthusiastic enough to proceed to the next technical round. And this stage typically lasts 15 to 30 minutes in length. So this is the first step, the first stage. And the key word there is enthusiastic. I can't tell you how many times I have told students that oftentimes it's just your seemingly interest in the job that propels you over others who aren't as interested. So just showing enthusiasm, showing excitement, showing some energy as you are giving answers, oftentimes is enough to get you to the next round. The second stage is where you're actually doing remote coding. And some companies will want to test your coding skills with a preliminary test before having you actually come in or before getting to the third stage. It may be conducted over the phone via Skype or Zoom, or it could be a homework type assignment. And if the company is respectful of your time, usually a remote coding challenge should only take a few hours for you to complete. And it's also a really good assessment for you to see if you know as much as you think you do when you're going through that take-home test. So that's what you can expect in the second stage. The last stage typically is the on-site interview. And it used to be called the whiteboarding challenge, where you would come on site onto the organization, and then you would actually code on a whiteboard. Nowadays, because of COVID, this stage is handled once again through the computer. So you're either using a third-party software that the company is providing, or you're sharing your screen and you're showing your code through your computer and not necessarily through a whiteboard. This is the stage that most people call the technical interview, the last stage. Most people call it the actual technical interview. It involves an interview with coding challenges that you have to complete, usually on a whiteboard, or in our case, you're going to complete it on your computer. This could also be done remotely over video conference. The whiteboard, this interview typically lasts 1 to 2 hours in length, but the whole technical interview itself can be several hours to a full day. And what you can count on in that third stage is not only an on-site, not only an interview to assess your technical knowledge, but you'll most likely also be put through behavioral and situational type questions as well. So it's a tough day. It's a grueling day, but you can rest assured once you get to the third stage, you're pretty close to getting an offer for that job. Okay, so who you'll be talking to at your interview. So you are either applying at a startup or smaller company, or you're applying at a larger company. And the difference is, if you are applying at a startup or smaller company, typically you will interview with members of the team, could be a senior developer, even the chief technology officer. Oftentimes you'll talk to, just because it's a smaller company. All interviewers typically have technical experience, and could even be, or maybe your future bosses, definitely your coworkers. So they're definitely going to want people that you'll be working with to speak with you, to assess your knowledge and to assess if they can work with you or not. Now, at a larger company, you'll typically talk to either a recruiter, someone in the HR staff, or maybe a member of the technical team. Some interviewers might have little technical knowledge, and it might not be people you'll directly work with if you're hired. You may even have multiple interviews with different people. Perhaps you'll have a whiteboarding technical interview with the tech team, a culture interview with HR, and an executive interview with the chief technology officer, and so on. So whatever the case, one good job interview preparation tip is to try researching your interviewers first by looking them up on LinkedIn. This is a really good tip to use to try to find out what their role is in the organization. It can ease your anxiety of doing the interview, puts a face to a name, certainly, and you might find something that you can connect over. Maybe you went to the same university, you have similar interests, or something that will just break the ice. So once again, what you're going to find at smaller companies is you'll probably be interviewing with people that you're working with. You could be interviewing right with the chief technology officer. In a larger company, it's typically a more structured interview where you're going to have to go through more people before you get that type of job. So it all depends on what you're looking for. And there are advantages and disadvantages of working at each one of those different types of companies. So that's a different conversation to have, but just something to think about, and something to think about on what type of organization and what type of interview process you think you might excel at. So let's talk about different types of interview questions that you might receive. Okay, so the first one is behavioral. These are definitely types of questions you can expect no matter what type of interview you go for. You're going to get behavioral type interviews. These questions are geared towards how you've acted in a specific situation in the past. And typically they're based on real life situations that you've encountered. Some examples of behavioral type questions. Tell me about a time when you handled a challenging situation. Give me an example of a time when you worked effectively under pressure. What happened when you made a mistake at work? Now, when you are answering behavioral type questions, I want you to utilize a process called the STAR method. And the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, result. situation, task, action, result. And the most important one of all of those steps is the last one, the result. So the interviewer wants to know what happened based on the decision or the action that you made. And the thing that I want you to keep in mind is it doesn't always have to be a positive result. It can be a negative result. It could be something, negative that happened because of the decision that you made. And that's fine. But what you want to say is that that happens, is that you learn from that experience and you now know what not to do in the event that that situation occurs again. So that's how you can effectively spin a negative into a positive. So I do have a document on how to tackle behavioral interviews. It's actually called the Ultimate Guide to Behavioral Interviews. If you are interested in that document, and I know that I've already given it to a lot of you, please shoot me an email and I'm happy to send you that document. Also, if you would like a copy of this presentation, simply shoot me an email and I'm more than happy to send you this presentation as well. Okay, so we have behavioral type questions. You're also going to get situational type questions. And these types of questions deal with hypothetical situations. So behavioral is more actual situations, where situational is hypothetical situations in the future and what you might do in that specific scenario. So things like, what would you do if you were unsure about the goals or direction of a coding task? How would you handle that situation? What would you do if your coworkers didn't complete their part of a coding project on time? It's a very interesting and good question. What would you do if your teammate asked you to review their code and it was full of bugs? How would you handle that? So great questions and great questions to prepare for. I would encourage you to prepare for all of these and think about how you would answer these questions. Once again, these are hypothetical situations, but these may have happened to you in real life, depending on your experience and your background. And these are things that you would be able to share in the interview. Other types of questions besides behavioral and situational. You may get questions on your education. So you may be asked about where you went to college. You might be asked about Syracuse University. If you're self-taught, if there's any code that you self-taught yourself, or any technical knowledge you self-taught yourself, and how you taught yourself. So what were the tools that you used? What were the sites that you used in order to get that information? So they want to see if the information that you're using to learn from is valid information, is good, is a good tool to use to learn on your own. They're also going to be assessing your technical knowledge, and technical interview questions assess your real skills and knowledge. These can be tech-oriented trivia type questions, like how can you make sure that your code is both safe and fast? Or when do you use polymorphism? Okay, you never know what kind of question might come up. Or you may get questions about code that you have to prove on your computer, or write down and show, or type up and show them what the code is based on the scenario that they give you. So once again, technical interviews are a lot more challenging than just going through regular interviews. And going through technical interviews, you can count on getting behavioral, situational type questions, questions on your education, and questions on your technical knowledge. But I can tell you also, technical type jobs tend to pay more as well. So the payoff of being prepared for these types of interviews and these types of jobs pays off in the long run. If you stick with it and you don't get frustrated and you take the time to really prepare yourself for all of these different types of things, you will be successful and you'll get the job and you'll get the salary that warrants the preparation that you put into this interview. Okay, so Now that we've talked about the different stages of the interview and the different types of questions that you're going to get in an interview, now let's talk about what you can expect when you're interviewing. And now these are things that you can start preparing for specifically. So you can expect a phone screen. You can expect a remote coding challenge of some sort. You can expect a remote whiteboard challenge, a remote interview. And then you can expect to do something after the interview as well, like thank yous, for example. So these are all things that you want to be prepared for when you're going through this type of interview. Okay, so during the phone interview, let's talk about that first. We'll talk about each one of these in detail. So during the technical phone interview, remember, this typically lasts anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes in length. So first of all, to get to this part, the company liked your resume and they liked your cover letter. So that's key, right? They may have liked it from you sending it in. They may have liked it from you getting a networking person to help you get this opportunity. In any event, they liked what they've seen on paper. So now they want to talk to you. So you got a phone interview. So congratulations. Your resume caught their eye. The phone screen is your chance to make a good first impression. You can showcase your tech experience to a degree. Some technical screenings over the phone may be much less tech focused than other parts of the interview, right? This is your opportunity to really focus on your soft skills, your communication skills, your collaboration skills, your teamwork skills. This is your chance to really show off the fact that you're okay working with people, and you're not just a person who wants to sit at the computer and code all day, but you actually want to be working with a team. You want to show your excitement about the company or the project. And when you do that, your positivity will come across in the interview. Know who your audience is as well. If you're interviewing with a recruiter, this person may have no programming knowledge at all. So this is where you really want to play up your soft skills, and don't get too technical because you're going to lose them. They're not going to know what you're talking about anyway. If you're interviewing with maybe somebody who has a technical background, like a software developer, for example, this is your chance to really show off your knowledge, your technical knowledge. So depending on who it is that you're talking to, will determine the types of answers that you give for the questions that are being asked. So it's very important that you know who your audience is and know what their background is. And this is where the research comes in handy. If you know the people that you'll be interviewing with, it always helps to check them out on LinkedIn. Also, be honest. Tell the interviewer what most interests you in the job and what kinds of projects that you'd like to work on. So don't be afraid to be honest and really open up a little bit and let the recruiter know what you're looking for. And finally, answer behavioral type questions by showing and not telling. And the way that you do that is by using specific, memorable details. And you're telling a story, and you're telling the story by using the STAR method. Tell the situation, what happened, or what was the situation, what was your task, what did you do, and what was the result. So that's how you can handle the technical phone interview part of the technical interview. So I hope that this was helpful for you to see the different, or to help you prepare the next time that you get a phone interview with a recruiter. Now, what are interviewers looking for in the phone screen? So this is what interviewers are looking for, beyond just tech skills, okay? Because really, there's a lot of people that are going to be interviewing that have very similar tech skills. Everybody's going to come in knowing very similar things. And that's why the company's talking to them. So they got to find things that are going to be differentiators, you know, between one person and another. The tech skills are going to look similar. So what is it that's going to make you stand out in the phone interview? So we want to look beyond tech skills. They want to see if you've, even if you've applied to hundreds of jobs, try to tailor your answers to the exact one you're interviewing for. So it's very important that you know what the requirements are of the job that you are applying to or the internship. The requirement is your roadmap. Everything that you do from the second that you start creating your cover letter until the second that you get an offer letter should be geared towards the requirements of that job. When you answer interview questions in a way that is specific to the company and to the requirements of the position, it shows that you've done your research. It makes the recruiter believe you when you say that you want the job. And you're not just talking about any job, but you're talking about this specific position that you are interviewing for. So we want to get away from talking in generalities, and we want to focus on getting specific into why it is that you are, why it is that you applied for this job in the first place, and what is it that you have to offer them as far as your skills and your experience goes. Look for opportunities to show your value. You know, make it clear that you support the big picture and the mission of the organization. I always tell students, research the company, make sure that you know what their mission statement is, and try to figure out what the culture is of the organization as well, to see if you would be a good fit. One of the best ways of doing that is by networking with alumni from Syracuse that work there already. And this is a great way for you to network with them and talk to them, not really about the position, but just about the company in general, and ask them their advice on what a good candidate would look like for this type of position, or what a good candidate would look like coming into the organization as a whole. So this is what specifically recruiters are looking for when they're talking about you on the phone. Once again, they're looking for your passion, and they're looking for your enthusiasm, your energy. Okay. Now, once you get past the phone interview, you're going to be doing some type of remote coding challenge. Okay, the coding challenge is typically a lot less rigorous than the third stage of you actually coming in and doing like a whiteboard presentation or the actual technical interview itself. However, that doesn't mean you can brush it off or apply less effort to this part, because you'll often be asked to justify your choices. The technical round has some flexibility in how companies handle it. So first, let's go over some of the common types of remote programming interview questions or challenges. Some companies will give you a real-time monitored challenge to see how you code. Often this is done via video interview plus a web-based code editor like CoderPad or Collab Edit or even Google Doc. So you want to be prepared for those. And I encourage you, if you never used these before, check them out. And you should practice with these so that you get comfortable using these types of tools. Remember, they want to see specifically what you can do. They're testing you, and they want to see your code. Other companies, usually startups, will simply require you to complete an at-home assignment instead, with a set time limit, usually 48 hours to get it done. Really small startups may not include a remote coding challenge at all. Instead, bringing you in for an on-site interview immediately after the phone interview. But bigger companies often do make you do some type of coding challenge. General rule, the bigger the company, the more structured the hiring process is. So that's what you have to look forward to. And look, I tell students this too. A lot of students are applied to the bigger companies and they don't do well in the interviews. And I tell them, look, stop applying to those big companies. Their interviews are more structured, and you have to go through more people before you get offered a position. Look for the smaller companies. Their interviews are much less structured, more conversational, and they are looking for people that mostly will fit into the culture of the organization. It's a much easier type of interview to get through. So if you're struggling through that rigorous, structured interview, try focusing less on the larger companies and more on the smaller companies. Doesn't have to be really small, it could be medium size. A lot of times you're going to find that the interviewing process is a lot better, a lot easier, and a lot less structured. So just my tip to you. Now, here's some tips that I want to give you for coding and for preparing for this part of the interview. During the real-time coding challenge, especially if it's not using one of those like CoderPad or ClabEdit, if there's someone actually watching you, communicate with your interviewer and think out loud. You need to get into the habit of talking out loud. Make it a collaborative process. So use terms like we instead of I, for example, since interviewers want to know that you're a team player. And remember to slow down, slow down, like take your time. These real-time challenges are not usually timed. So take your time, think it through, give the interviewer a chance to give you hints if they see you struggling. During a take-home coding assignment, take time to plan out your code before you write it out. And make sure you fully understand the instructions and requirements. Reread them several times before starting. And once more, after you're finished with the challenge, make sure that you've ticked every box that they're asking for. So that's a little bit of advice depending on what type of interview or what type of coding challenge you get. Real-time coding challenge is not usually timed as the coding challenge that you get where you're using a third party and they're giving you an hour to finish the exercise. So if that's the case, don't be afraid to ask your interviewer questions for clarification. Okay, so what are interviewers looking for in the coding challenge section? Certainly they're looking for your coding skills. They're looking at your testing code as you write it, your problem solving skills, and your collaboration skills. What types of questions are you asking for clarification? One way to stand out in your remote coding challenge technical round is to go above and beyond. Sometimes remote coding challenges will come with optional bonus requirements. Complete those requirements to impress your interviewers, but don't cheat or get help from others to make yourself look better. And here's why. Because during the follow-up live interviews, it's very common for employers to probe and ask you to explain why certain choices were made. So you need to understand every step of your code and why you chose that specific syntax in that code. This is why it's imperative that you don't get help. If you do, you're going to be exposed during the follow-up conversation. So it's important that you do the assignment on your own, especially the take-home. It's going to be very easy for you to want to cheat and look things up or get help, but you need to understand it. And if you don't understand it, then this is giving you an idea as to, is this the best position for you? Or is this at this point a bit challenging for you to complete based on where you are in your studies or based on where you are in your education or your knowledge? So you just, be honest with yourself. Okay, now you got through the phone interview. You got through the coding challenge. Now you get to the step 3, and this is where you're actually doing the actual hard interview part. Remember, this could last up to a day, this part, okay? And there's actually There some things that I want you to think about when you get to this part of the interview, the third part, the third step. This is the third and last step, the actual interview itself. So you've arrived at the most intimidating part. If this were a startup, the technical interviews might be a lot less formal, which we talked about. There may not even be a whiteboard exercise for you to do coding exercises on. You know, at this point, they may not care as much because of the fact that you already did your coding exercise. Still, whatever the company size, it never hurts to know how to prepare. So let's talk about any situation that may arise, just so you're prepared. So the first thing you want to do is ask clarifying questions before you start writing code. So remember, when you're on this remote interview, they're going to be asking you a situation where you're going to have to code it. So don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions. Instead of starting to write out code immediately, slow down. Even if you think you know how to solve the problem or answer the question, still ask clarifying questions. So by doing this, you might get hints from the interviewer. Plus, you want to make sure you fully understand the challenge of the question before diving in. So try to appease or damper your enthusiasm for wanting to dive right in and start coding. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions, because oftentimes the interviewer will throw you little nuggets to help you along the way. You may have already known what it is that the interviewer is telling you, and that right away should be giving you confidence that you know what you're doing and you know what the company is looking for through your code. Talk through your code, think out loud, give the interviewer a window into your thoughts. Like, what are you thinking? What happens in a technical interview is as much about the journey as it is the destination. And it's designed to test the candidate's communication and problem-solving skills as well. More important than the solution is how you work at getting to the solution. You can articulate your thoughts while writing out your code. Are you putting together a clear response to the question? So certain types of programming interview questions aren't even supposed to have easy answers, making them even more about the thought process. So you're going to find that there's certain, coding situations where, once again, they're not really looking for an answer. They're just looking for how you are attempting to get to the answer, the process. So if you're not sure about the answer, don't worry about it. Just think about how you would go about getting to that answer. That's what they're looking for. So the idea is you want to have, you're supposed to have a couple of ideas, think creatively, and maybe even take some ideas your interviewer feeds you and run with them. Just try to relax and keep thinking out loud and trying new ideas. A helpful tip for explaining your thought process is to act like you're part of the team already. If this were a real life situation, how would you discuss, explain, and solve the problem? So think of it that way. This can also give your interviewers an idea of how you'd collaborate on the team if they were to hire you. Number 3 is to speak clearly and precisely. That's very important. It may seem like common sense, but once again, you're going to be nervous. And a lot of times when you're nervous, you talk too fast. So you have to control the rate of speech and how clearly that you're speaking as well. Being in a high pressure situation like a programming interview might have you a little flustered. Be clear and specific as possible to help you keep yourself collected. Pay attention to your vocabulary, even on simple concepts. Refer to a concept by its formal name. This is important. For example, instead of saying something like, it calls that function and the result is 5, you need to say the add numbers function call returns 5, which is assigned to the variable sum. So you need to use proper terminology when it comes to this stage of the interview. the people that you're interviewing with at this stage are going to know exactly what you're talking about. So you don't need to speak in a language that you think they're not going to understand or try to dumb down the terminology. This is where you're able to shine and really use the terminology to your advantage. Try to avoid pronouns and ambiguous words like result, because as you know, usually there is not a result, but it's usually some kind of output that you're giving in the technical interview. It's an output, a side effect, or a return value, right? So these are things that you want to make sure that you talk about. The second example demonstrates your clarity of thought and precision of language, leaving the reader with an unambiguous account of what the code is supposed to be doing. The fourth one is if you're stuck, and this is really important, stay calm, think out loud, and try new ideas. And I want you to think about this. If you're not sure of the answer, try to start with what you do know. Coding interviews are a lot like math exams in high school, and if you've taken math at Syracuse. Often you'll get partial credit for showing your work and putting in some effort to find a solution. If you can demonstrate your thought process, the interviewer will understand that you're doing your best to find a solution. Honesty is key here because good interviewers can spot when you're bluffing. Don't panic or try to fib your way through it. Be honest that you don't know, but explain where you would look to solve the issue if you faced it in your daily work. If you're really struggling to solve the problem, what can you do? So here's the tip. Try breaking it down even further and solve a much simpler version. For example, you could write a very basic solution and then optimize it later. The point is you want to get something out there. You want to get some code out there and talk out loud as you're figuring things out. In most cases, you'll get points just for trying and showing how your brain works. Plus, writing things out visually oftentimes can trigger you to remember things, and it inspires a solution. So think about that. Start simple and then work your way into the more complex as you start getting more and more confidence. So how to pass a technical interview isn't always about getting everything 100% right, but staying cool and rational under pressure will always help. Once again, the theme of tonight, it's the process, not the answer that the company is looking for, the interviewer is looking for. And finally, check for errors and walk through your solution at the end. So companies want to hire technical employees who can write bug-free code, or at least know how to check for errors. Towards the end of writing out your solution, begin to check for any errors. This can show interviewers that you're not just interested in writing code, but that you want to write good code. So when you're done with your code, walk through your solution so interviewers understand fully what you did and why you did it. Now, what do interviewers look for in the remote technical interview? They're looking for your coding skills, of course, but they're looking for how you solve problems, how you think creatively, how you communicate, how you think analytically. Are you a good culture fit? How you handle feedback. So if you're straying down the wrong path and the interviewer is trying to help you, how do you react to that? And your ability to solve problems. Okay, so I know it's a lot. You're thinking about that and you're like, holy cow, that's a lot of things. But like I said, they are more challenging than just a regular interview. And not only are you trying to get through the behavioral and situational type questions, but you got to know your stuff. You got to know, what the code is and how to solve problems using the code. Now, when you are writing out your code, the thing that I want you to think about is to try to keep your code simple and clear. Design efficient algorithms. Something that really stands out is writing easy to read code, right? Because 80% of that is just picking really great variable names that you use. So don't use shorthand names like X and Y to try to move faster, because you're just going to confuse yourself and your interviewer and you'll look reckless. Take a second to pick a variable name that really makes it clear what the variable holds, what type of variable it is, etc. You know, you're going to take a moment to write all that out so that you don't confuse yourself and that the interviewer doesn't get confused either. So don't just try to rush through it by just simply naming things like X and Y, like actually write out what the variable means and what the variable is for. Now, after the technical interview, so phone interview, coding challenge, you went through a whiteboarding exercise with the company. What do you do next? This is where you are going to be sending in your thank yous, okay? But before that, you know, keep some emotional distance from the process. You're not going to get every job that you interview for, as you know. This is nothing new that I'm telling you. A lot of you have been through a lot of these already, and you're getting frustrated and you're losing your confidence. But what I want to tell you is, it's not you that they're rejecting. It's not you personally. They're just not seeing the experience or the skills that you have at that particular moment. And I want to encourage you to continue to go through this process of going through these interviews, because the more experience you get just by interviewing, the better skills you're going to get interviewing. Just like the more you code, the better you get at it. The more you interview, the better you get at it. And you have to look at each interview with a fresh set of eyes. You know, don't go into the interview with the attitude like, oh, I have to go through this interview again. I'm going to get rejected. So they're going to be no different than any other company. If you go into the interview like that, then yes, you're not going to get the job. So every interview that you go into, you need to go in with a fresh set of eyes. You need to go in with that fresh energy, and you need to go in with the attitude that you're going to get this job. And even if you don't get the job, have the perspective that the interview was great practice. And if it was your first interview, now you know what to expect from a technical interview. So it's not going to be such a big deal, but don't let it intimidate you. Don't let it get to, if this is your first technical interview and you went to the phone interview and they asked you something you didn't know, that automatically you take yourself out of the running. Like that's not a good solution to take. You want to put yourself through that so that the next time you do it, you're going to know exactly how to handle that situation. Send a thank you email within 24 hours of the technical interview. And you want to send it to the recruiter or the hiring manager that you've been talking to. Ask them if there's anything else they need from you, or if there's anything about your interview that gave them pause, so you can address it if possible. So when you're sending the thank you email, make a note of everyone you speak to during the interview. And if you have their contact information, reach out to every one of them. But if you don't, just send one thank you email to the contact person, but make sure that they also express your thanks to the group as well. It'll definitely help the team remember you and the interview that you just had. Now, if you haven't heard back in a week or so, send a follow-up email to the tech recruiter, reiterating your interest in the role and asking about potential next steps. So the thing that I want to tell you is, even after the interview is over, during that interview, when you're done with the coding exercise, you need to have at least 3 questions to ask them, because they're gonna say at the end, do you have any questions for us? And you need to have 3 questions. And one of those, at least 3, one of those questions is, what are the next steps? Okay, don't ever leave an interview without asking what the next steps are so that you know what to expect. So they may say, we're talking to a couple more people, we're putting them through the on-site whiteboarding exercise, and we're going to get back to everybody within a week. So at least you'll know. And then if the week's up and you haven't heard from them, then it's okay for you to follow up with, hey, just following up, it's been a week, want to know where you are in the process and if you need any more information from me. Okay, so that's the follow-up email. The thank you email is the perfect opportunity for you to reiterate why you are the best person for this job. So you could talk about something specific that happened in the interview or that you were discussing in the interview. And then you can talk about a specific skill that you have or experience that you have that makes you the best candidate for this position. So it's actually two things you want to talk about in that thank you email. Something specific about the interview itself, and then reiterate why you are the best person for the position. It's a perfect opportunity for you to do that in that thank you email. Okay. Now, here are some common interview mistakes that students make going through technical interviews. The first thing is you're not preparing enough for this interview. Okay, and there's no such thing as too much practice, coding practice. The good news is most students don't put in the time. So if you put in the time, you're automatically going to stand out because most students don't. So it really doesn't take much to pull ahead from others, but I'm going to encourage you to be as prepared as possible. What happens is interviewers see these candidates, see you, and they know that you can do this. They know that you can answer these questions, but you just didn't prepare enough for it. And unfortunately, you're out of the running because of that. The other thing is jumping into the code without taking a moment to think it through. So we kind of talked about this earlier. You're going to be eager and you're going to want to start to solve the problem right away. But I want to encourage you to take a few minutes, question your assumptions, make a plan, make a plan first. Starting too quickly gets you into trouble, especially when you could have taken a moment to prevent confusion. Some of the most common mistakes students make are avoidable. So pause for a moment and think through the problem-solving process. The other thing is don't be arrogant or opinionated when you are going through this interview. People would rather work with a humble person than an arrogant know-it-all, especially for those with fewer years of experience. It's more important to come across as being malleable and eager to learn, so the employer can envision you in a variety of projects and roles. Even seemingly innocent statements like, I love X, but I don't like Y, may come across as I'm limited in my ability to work in a certain way. So you want to be open to any and all situations. So don't limit yourself or put limits on yourself by saying that you don't like certain things. You like everything. You are eager to get started in anything and everything that they would like to get you started in. Finally, it's not making conversation or chit chat. This is the way for you to show them how well you communicate, both verbally and non-verbally. This is where you're showing off your communication skills. Remember that your interviewers are human and that they're looking for a human. So it's extremely valuable to make a connection. An interview is not just about answering questions correctly, but it's a conversation. So you want to ask good questions, laugh and make jokes if that's your personality. At the end of the interview, even if you missed a few questions, the overall feeling the interviewer has about you should be positive. So if you know that you're not a great conversationalist, make that a focus to improve on. So those are some common technical mistakes that students make. Now, let's look at some questions that you can expect to get on a technical interview. Let's take a look at this. These are some examples. So the first question, what do you do to keep your tech skills up to date? It's a great question. So interviewers ask this type of question during a technical interview because they want to evaluate how students approach their self-development regarding their careers. Because technology changes so quickly, successful candidates usually have specific resources that they use, news outlets, other ways of keeping their skills current. So a answer could be, you regularly read tech blogs from respected embedded IT professionals, participate in short-term skills training, talk about the name of the blogs or where you're getting the training from, Coursera, edX, LinkedIn Learning. I've started working on personal projects where I frequently refer to some of my go-to sources and forums to check up on the tools I'm using and my ability to implement specific processes. So look, they want to know that you love this stuff, that you do this on your spare time, that this isn't just a job for you, but this is something that you truly enjoy doing. That's how they are. And that's the kind of people that they're looking for. Another question, what are your favorite tech products to use and why? So interviewers like to ask questions like this one to get an idea of a candidate's enthusiasm and familiarity with working with certain technologies. Recruiters also want to know how students will adapt to working with the company's hardware and operating systems as well. So you could say, I don't have a specific favorite, but I love the sleek design and quality user-end experience of working within frameworks that support JavaScript and Python. Great answer. Especially if JavaScript and Python are requirements that were listed in the job. It's perfect. What are some benefits of working in an agile environment? It's another good question. Agile provides developers and programmers with the tools necessary for developing quality software products. And interviewers who ask this question are usually probing candidates' familiarity and understanding of the agile environment. So you can take a look at the answer for this. Agile offers continuous, fast-paced product testing at each stage of integration. Agile is also very popular in project management as well, just because it's more flexible. It's a flexible type of methodology to use, very similar to software development as well. Why are doors rectangular instead of round or square? Okay, you could get these oddball questions, right? Technical interviews frequently include answering complex problems, brain teasers, numerical reasoning problems. An interviewer asks these types of questions because they want to get an idea of how students approach solving problems as the way they think about different aspects of problem solving. There may not even be a correct answer to questions like this, and these questions are mainly used to allow the interviewer to observe how candidates reason and create solutions. So this is just an example of one of the ways that you could answer that question. You might have something else that you would say if you were asked this question, but you need to be prepared for all different types of questions that are asked. What are the odds of rolling a 2 on a die on the first roll? Very interesting. Another aspect of technical interviews, numerical reasoning problems that candidates might encounter. Interviewers ask these questions to assess candidates' abilities to tackle complex mathematical reasoning. Relying on math skills in addition to technical skills is usually required for tech professionals to succeed in their jobs. So those are some examples of types of questions that you might get. Now, let me, we're almost done, by the way. So if you're thinking, Jesus, this is a long workshop, I'm almost done, I promise. Here's some tips for you to think about. First of all, don't dwell on your mistakes. Be comfortable asking questions and asking for clarification. If you make a mistake, don't let it affect the rest of the interview. You're going to have the opportunity to answer questions, and the interviewer often forgives a single mistake. So when something goes wrong, move on and focus on the rest of the interview. If you don't know the answer, just be honest. Try to engage the interviewer so you can learn more about the topic and or explain where you could find the answer. Use the interview to show your passion for tech, okay? And this is something that I was alluding to earlier. By demonstrating your passion for coding and creating new programs, you're also showing why you're the right candidate for the position. So any related extracurricular activities that you have are a great way of showing this passion. So a lot of times they want to hire students that are passionate about cool algorithms, slick code, new ideas, stuff you do in your spare time. You know, like we said, it's not a job. You do it because you love it. So they want to know that you're passionate about what it is that you're doing. And look, guys, even if you're not passionate, you are in the interview. You're very passionate about code during the time that you are in that interview. So this is your Oscar-worthy acting job every time you go through an interview. Be prepared for a lengthy interview process. And we talked about the process, right? It's 3 steps. Each one of them is a different length. The tech interview process can take several weeks and involve multiple interviews. Recruiters will clarify this process in advance oftentimes. After the phone screening, you might meet with managers, tech engineers in the days or weeks to come. So be prepared for a rather rigorous process. That's the deal with technical interviews. And finally, don't forget to prepare for the traditional behavioral situational type questions. Okay, it's not just about your tech skills. Employers often say that students are so concerned about the technical interview that they haven't thought through answers to common questions like tell me about yourself or why you're interested in this job. So if you can't answer those questions, it's going to be very difficult for you to move on to the next round. So you have to focus not only on your skills that you have technically, but you also have to be able to answer the basic interview questions as well. And these are things that we help you prepare for in career services. Okay, and then I have a slide that has some technical interview resources for you to utilize. Once again, you can either take a picture of this slide or if you're interested, I will send you the presentation after this workshop is over. And this is the last slide that's on there. One of the things that I want you to start looking at is if you look at the bullet that says mock data scientist technical interview, there's a lot of people on YouTube that will simulate a tech interview coding challenge. So you can see exactly what it is like to go through a coding challenge, not only typing out the code, but also thinking through the code and thinking out loud. And if you've never done it before, it's a weird kind of experience. It's kind of weird to watch. So I encourage you to watch as much as you can and practice, 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 practice. Practice is what is going to make you more confident, make you more skilled, and make you more prepared for these types of interviews that you are about to go on to or get yourself into. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share